I never imagined that the depths of human depravity could serve as both my inspiration and my prison, a duality that has defined my existence and now serves as the beating heart of this channel, inside the criminal world. As I sit before you today, I invite you to step into a realm where the line between justice and injustice blurs, where every shadow conceals a secret, and every heartbeat echoes with the memory of lives irrevocably altered by the choices made in the darkness. For decades, I wandered a path marked by unspeakable crimes and tortured recollections, a journey that took me deep into the corridors of a criminal mind and, in turn, forced me to confront the very nature of my own soul. I lived in the periphery, hidden from a society that prided itself on order and righteousness, yet I could never escape the haunting whispers of remorse and defiance. My story is not merely one of evasion and regret. It is a chronicle of a fractured identity, where freedom was granted at the cost of eternal torment. Every moment of my past is etched with the stark irony of survival, a survival that came not through redemption but by the cruel oversight of a system that let darkness slip through its fingers. I recall the nights when the rain fell relentlessly, each drop washing away the remnants of innocence and revealing the harsh truth beneath. I roamed deserted alleys and crumbling neighborhoods where the only sound was the pitter-patter of rain on cold, wet pavement, a constant reminder that no one is truly free from the ghosts of their past. In these opening moments, I want you to imagine a world where every corner, every flicker of neon light, holds a story of pain and defiance. Picture a cityscape at dusk, where ancient brick walls and modern glass towers stand side by side, a visual metaphor for the collision of past sins with the promise of a new beginning. This channel is more than a recounting of criminal exploits. It is an invitation to peer into the abyss where the human spirit grapples with its darkest impulses and, sometimes, even finds a glimmer of hope. I speak to you now not as a hero nor a villain, but as a witness, a reluctant chronicler of a life lived in perpetual conflict with itself. My journey began long before I understood the magnitude of my transgressions. There was a time when I believed that my ability to evade capture was proof of my invincibility, a twisted belief that the universe itself conspired in my favor. But the truth, as I have come to learn, is far more complicated. The very freedom I once savored has become the source of an unending inner torment, a relentless echo of every wrong I committed, every life I shattered. The world I inhabited was a labyrinth of concrete and shadows, a place where every street held its own story of despair and fleeting redemption. I witnessed firsthand the stark contrasts of human existence, a world where the neon glow of a bustling metropolis could disguise the silent suffering of its inhabitants. In those rain-soaked nights, I would walk along narrow alleys and deserted bridges, haunted by memories of a past that I could neither escape nor erase. The faces of those I wronged appeared in every glistening reflection, each one a testament to a life unfulfilled, a hope forever stolen. I remember vividly one night in particular when the city's pulse slowed to a near silence, and the only sound was the steady drip of water from a broken street lamp. It was then that I truly understood the weight of my actions. In the solitude of that moment, standing on a cold, deserted bridge, I felt the full force of a reckoning that had been decades in the making. The river below roared like a beast, its turbulent currents echoing the storm within me. I could no longer deny that every choice, every act of cruelty, was an indelible part of who I was. This realization was as bitter as it was profound, a mirror reflecting back the monstrous visage of a man condemned by his own conscience. Yet, even amidst this overwhelming despair, there flickered moments of startling clarity, a recognition that the journey through darkness might yet lead to an understanding of our most human qualities. In the very spaces where decay and desolation reigned, I began to see a strange beauty, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. There is an undeniable poetry in the interplay of light and shadow, of hope interwoven with regret. And it is in this tension that I have found the inspiration to create this channel, to share with you not only the sordid details of a life lived on the edge of the criminal world, but also the subtle lessons hidden within. Inside the Criminal World is not merely an exploration of crimes committed or lives ruined. It is an immersive experience, a descent into the psychological labyrinth that defines our capacity for both destruction and redemption. As you watch this video, I urge you to let go of any preconceived notions about right and wrong, to open your mind to the complex tapestry of emotions that drive every human action. For in every act of cruelty, there lies an echo of pain, and in every moment of defiance, a spark of vulnerability that is all too human. Over the years, I have come to understand that the criminal mind is not a monolith. It is a mosaic of shattered illusions and bitter truths. My path was forged in the crucible of personal demons and the stark realities of a society that often turns a blind eye to its own failures. I have seen firsthand how the wheels of justice can grind slowly, how innocent lives can be marred by the missteps of those entrusted with protecting them. This channel is an honest confrontation with those failures, a raw, unfiltered look into a world where the veneer of civilization is often just a thin disguise for underlying chaos. In the opening chapters of my story, I reveled in the perverse thrill of evading capture, convinced that I was a master of my own fate. I moved through the night like a ghost, my presence barely noticeable against the backdrop of an indifferent city. Yet, every fleeting moment of freedom was shadowed by the awareness that I was living on borrowed time, a time that would eventually catch up with me in ways I could not imagine. The relentless pursuit of justice, however delayed, has a way of unearthing even the deepest secrets. And as the years passed, the weight of my actions began to accumulate, a silent jury of memories and regrets that would not let me forget. Now, as I stand before you with nothing left to hide, I embrace the role of both storyteller and penitent. I am here to offer an unvarnished account of a life steeped in darkness, not to glorify its horrors, but to reveal the complex interplay of fate and free will that defines us all. This is a journey into the heart of a criminal mind, a mind that has experienced the full spectrum of human emotion, from the icy grip of remorse to the desperate yearning for absolution. Imagine, if you will, the sound of rain tapping against a window pane on a cold night, the rhythmic percussion, a reminder of every tear shed, every sin committed. Picture a solitary figure walking down an empty street, the only light coming from flickering neon signs that cast long, distorted shadows. In that moment, the figure is not merely an outlaw or a criminal, he is the embodiment of every internal conflict, every battle fought between the desire for freedom and the inevitable pull of conscience. That is the story I share with you today, a narrative woven from the threads of regret, resilience, and the faint, enduring hope that even the most tormented soul can find a path toward redemption. As we delve deeper into this exploration, you will witness the transformation of a man who once thrived on the chaos of his own making into someone who is forced to confront the very essence of his being. You will see how the remnants of a broken past can serve as the foundation for a hard-won understanding of what it means to be human. There is an undeniable beauty in acknowledging our imperfections, in laying bare the truths we have long tried to bury beneath layers of indifference and denial. In the coming segments of this video, we will traverse the rain-slicked alleys and abandoned corners of a city that holds countless untold stories, each one a testament to the enduring struggle between darkness and light. We will explore the haunted reflections of a man whose past is inescapable, and whose journey through guilt and redemption mirrors the inner battles faced by many of us. It is a narrative that challenges us to question the nature of justice, to reconsider the definitions of punishment and forgiveness, and to understand that within every act of wrongdoing, there exists the potential for a transformative reckoning. So, welcome to Inside the Criminal World. This is not just a recounting of crimes committed in the shadows of society, it is an invitation to explore the complex, often painful tapestry of human existence. It is a call to examine the hidden recesses of our minds, where the interplay of fear, regret, and hope creates a landscape as vast and as intricate as any cityscape at night. In this space, we will face the unforgiving mirror of truth together, acknowledging the darkness within while daring to dream of a future that might, one day, be redeemed by the light. As you join me on this journey, allow the narrative to seep into your consciousness, to evoke emotions that linger long after the screen goes dark. This is the opening chapter of a story that spans decades, a story of unspeakable acts and the equally profound struggle to rise above them. Here, amidst the echoes of a dark past, we begin the slow, painful process of healing. We step into a world where every shadow holds a lesson, and every flicker of light is a promise of a better tomorrow. Thank you for embarking on this journey with me. Let us now step into the depths of this criminal world, not to revel in its horrors, but to understand them so that we might ultimately learn what it truly means to be human. Echoes of a dark past. I never imagined that the weight of my past would follow me like a relentless shadow, one that stretches across decades and invades every quiet moment of my existence. My name, once common and unremarkable, now echoes in hushed whispers among those who remember, or perhaps suspect, the unspeakable acts I committed. I speak now not as a plea for redemption but as a confession, a spoken truth born out of the need to unburden a soul that has been in torment for far too long. I was free for 30 long, twisting years of freedom that was as much a curse as it was a blessing. Every day I roamed through a world that appeared calm on the surface, yet beneath it lay a labyrinth of memories and emotions that refused to be silenced. My crimes, hidden in the annals of time and obscured by the passage of years, were not acts of calculated malice alone. They were born out of impulses I barely understood, driven by a dark mixture of inner chaos and an inexplicable detachment from the world around me. At times, I wondered if fate had intervened in the most bizarre manner, a twist of destiny that allowed me to slip through the fingers of justice, even as innocent souls paid the price of my actions. I still remember that bitter irony. The world moved on, technology advanced, and society grew more vigilant, yet I managed to keep my secrets buried deep within. The thrill of evading capture was eclipsed only by the guilt that gnawed at me in silent hours. In my quieter moments, when the hum of the modern city dimmed to a low murmur, I would find myself reliving each encounter, the stolen glances of terror, the fleeting expressions of pain on faces I encountered only once. It was as if the echoes of those moments were trapped in a fragile web spun by time, and every day, as I walked past a familiar street or lingered in a forgotten alley, those echoes whispered my sins back to me. My confession is not meant to serve as an apology to those I wronged, for the devastation I wrought cannot be washed away by mere words. Instead, I speak for the sake of truth, a truth that has been hidden by layers of societal indifference and legal technicalities. I recall the moments of reckless abandon that led to a series of crimes which, in their own twisted way, defined my existence. It wasn't always a calculated plan. Often, it was the spontaneous burst of impulses fueled by an inner turmoil I could never fully comprehend. I confess now that each act, each fleeting moment of cruelty, was accompanied by a silent question: how long can I escape the reckoning of my own conscience? Walking the streets at night, I am haunted by the interplay of shadow and light. The neon signs that flicker above the alleyways seem to mimic the erratic beats of my heart, each flash a reminder of a memory I wish I could forget. I find myself drawn to the underbelly of the city, where the familiar scent of decay mingles with the crisp air of modernity, a constant reminder that the world is as complex and multifaceted as the human soul. In those moments, I feel both an outsider and an integral part of a story that has long since become a local legend, a legend that, despite my efforts to escape, continues to pull me back into its vortex. There were days when I almost believed I was invincible, a phantom slipping through the cracks of time. I watched as others were accused, convicted, and punished for sins they may or may not have committed, while I remained untouched by the long arm of the law. The twisted justice of it all was that not only did I avoid capture, but in doing so, I inadvertently condemned another innocent man to 20 years behind cold bars. The irony of fate was as palpable as the chill in the air during a winter night, a night where every breath reminded me of the irreversible mistakes I had made. I still remember the piercing eyes of the man who was forced to accept a fate that was not his own, his soul marred by the weight of a crime that was never his. It was during these solitary nights that the boundaries between reality and nightmare began to blur. I often found myself questioning the very nature of time, if memories could be rewritten, if the past could be forgiven. My confession is an attempt to reconcile with these questions, to seek some semblance of understanding in a life marred by irreversible decisions. I have spent countless hours sitting in the darkness of my small room, where the only company is the relentless ticking of an old clock and the faint hum of distant traffic. In that solitude, the voices of the past emerge, whispers that remind me of the lives I altered, the hearts I broke, and the innocence I extinguished. I confess that sometimes I am overwhelmed by a sense of surreal detachment. It is as if I exist in a parallel world, where the normal rules of morality no longer apply. In those moments, the world transforms into a macabre theater, and I am both the unwilling actor and the silent observer of a tragedy that unfolds without my control. The reality of my actions becomes intertwined with a nightmarish vision of twisted justice, where the faces of my victims merge into one indistinguishable mass, a haunting mosaic of sorrow and regret. I speak these words aloud, hoping that in the act of confession, the ghosts of my past might finally find a voice, and perhaps, in some distant corner of this fragmented existence, redemption might flicker into life. My narrative is interlaced with the remnants of the past, memories of a time when the world was less complicated, yet every decision held the weight of destiny. The streets I once roamed, bathed in the soft glow of streetlights and the haze of cigarette smoke, now seem to be battlegrounds where every step carries the echoes of a lost era. I recall the texture of old brick walls, the distant hum of conversations in a language that now feels foreign, and the melancholic strains of music that played in dimly lit bars. These fragments of memory are as vivid as they are painful, reminders of a time when life was a mosaic of fleeting moments, each holding the promise of something more profound, a promise that, in the end, was left unfulfilled. In the solitude of my reflections, I sometimes attempt to reconstruct a different ending, a narrative where justice was swift, where I was never allowed the freedom to continue the silent torment of those around me. Yet, every alternate ending dissolves into the mist of reality, leaving only the cold truth that the passage of time has done nothing to heal the scars etched upon the lives of many. I have come to understand that freedom is a double-edged sword, and my freedom so long, so deceptive, has been both my salvation and my ultimate damnation. The irony is that while I was free to live out my days, it was not a freedom granted by choice but rather one imposed by the failures of a system that could not grasp the true nature of my sins. As I continue to walk this solitary path, I remain trapped in an endless dialogue with myself, a conversation that oscillates between remorse, defiance, and a bleak acceptance of fate. Every step I take is an act of reckoning, a reminder that the past is never truly behind us. It lurks in every shadow, every fleeting moment of silence, and every whisper of wind that carries with it the scent of regret. I speak now in the hope that, by shedding light on the darkness of my past, I might somehow dispel the shadows that have long haunted me. The confession is not a plea for forgiveness, it is an acknowledgement of the irreversible chain of events that have defined my life. In the end, I am left with an unyielding truth: the line between guilt and innocence is as fragile as a whisper, and the scales of justice are forever imbalanced by the unseen forces of fate and circumstance. I have seen the faces of those who suffered because of my inaction, my calculated indifference, and the sheer unpredictability of my own impulses. Their memories are engraved in my mind like scars, a permanent reminder that every action, no matter how insignificant it might seem at the moment, has consequences that reverberate through time. Now, as I sit beneath the indifferent gaze of a city that has long forgotten my name, I wonder if this confession will ever bring me the peace I so desperately seek. Or perhaps it is merely the beginning of a longer journey, a journey that forces me to confront not only the ghosts of my past but also the monstrous reflections of my own soul. I have learned that in the silence of the night, when the world around me is cloaked in darkness and the only sound is the relentless beating of my heart, the truth becomes inescapable. It is then that I realize, no amount of time, no matter how many years pass, can ever truly erase the echoes of a dark past. Shattered illusions reborn. I remember the moment when the fragile veil of my delusions finally began to tear, a night so drenched in rain and remorse that it felt as if the heavens themselves wept for my sins. It started with an intangible sense of dread, a forewarning that my carefully curated illusion of control was dissolving into chaos. I had long reveled in the bitter irony of my freedom, 3 decades of evading the justice that should have consumed me. Yet, as the years pressed on, every echo of the past grew louder, every shadow lengthened with a hidden menace. That fateful evening, the urban labyrinth where I had once found solace transformed into a theater of unspeakable revelations. The rain hammered the pavement in a relentless rhythm, and with every droplet, it seemed as if the sins I had buried deep within me were being scrubbed back to the surface. I wandered the slick streets, each step a reminder of the lives altered by my inaction, each whisper of the wind a spectral confession. The familiar glow of neon signs and the hum of city life were no longer mere background noise, they were the pulse of a reckoning long overdue. It began subtly, a fleeting silhouette in the corner of my eye, a chill that crawled beneath my skin as I passed deserted alleys. At first, I convinced myself it was nothing more than a trick of my fatigued mind, a hallucination conjured by years of isolation. But soon, the omens multiplied. I found small tokens scattered in unexpected places, a broken pocket watch lying abandoned on a rain-drenched bench, its hands frozen at an impossible hour, alone, withered flower pressed between the pages of a forgotten book in a dusty library, the inexplicable sound of footsteps echoing when I was alone. Each token was a silent messenger from a past I had desperately tried to forget, a vivid reminder that my transgressions were not lost to time. One particularly harrowing night, as I sought refuge beneath the skeletal canopy of an overpass, I sensed an otherworldly presence. The city, a maze of decaying brick and glimmering glass, seemed to conspire with my own inner demons. I sat on a cold, wet curb, the reflections of streetlights dancing like fractured memories on the puddles around me. I closed my eyes, attempting to drown out the cacophony of distant sirens and murmured voices that sounded eerily like accusations. In that moment of solitude, I felt the oppressive weight of every life I had wronged, each regret crystallizing into a tangible force that pressed upon my chest. In the midst of this inner turmoil, an unexpected visitor arrived, a silent harbinger of fate. It was a cold, misty night when I heard the soft, deliberate knock on my door. I opened it slowly, half expecting to see nothing more than another figment of my tortured imagination. Instead, I was met by a man whose gaze pierced through the darkness like a blade. His eyes were unyielding, filled with a sorrow and judgment that stripped away any pretense of normalcy. No words passed his lips, his silence was more damning than any accusation. In that gaze, I recognized not just retribution for my deeds, but the anguished spirit of every soul I had abandoned to despair. That encounter set in motion a series of events that unraveled the carefully maintained facade of my existence. Every subsequent night became a descent into a labyrinth of paranoia and introspection. The once comforting anonymity of the urban sprawl turned sinister. Familiar streets morphed into corridors of dread, each corner hiding spectral figures and echoing the dirge of lost lives. I found myself retracing old routes, seeking answers in the very places where I had once evaded capture. The city, with its chaotic blend of modernity and decay, became a mirror reflecting the fractured state of my mind. The transformation within me was gradual yet inevitable. I began to document every unsettling detail in a series of feverish journal entries. Under the trembling light of a single lamp, I scribbled down the whispers of the night, cryptic observations of shadows that moved with a life of their own, fleeting images of faces half glimpsed in the gloom, and the overwhelming sense of being pursued by an unseen force. Each written word was both a desperate cry for absolution and an acknowledgement of my own culpability. The act of writing, once a refuge from my torment, became a ritual of confession, a cathartic process where every stroke of the pen excavated more layers of buried guilt. As my inner world spiraled further into disarray, I began questioning the very fabric of reality. Was the past truly a closed chapter, or did it have the power to invade the present with relentless ferocity? The boundaries between memory and nightmare blurred until they were indistinguishable. I would wake from sleepless nights with my heart pounding, drenched in sweat as I replayed vivid scenes of cruelty and neglect. The dreams, as fragmented as they were haunting, merged with the waking hours, forming a continuous stream of disquiet that left me gasping for breath. It was as if time itself had become a cruel construct, a cycle of perpetual torment from which there was no escape. In the midst of this psychological maelstrom, an internal rebellion began to stir. I found myself oscillating between a desire for penance and a defiant urge to reclaim the freedom that had defined my twisted existence for so long. The irony was palpable. The very freedom I had once cherished was now a prison of my own making. Every step I took was shadowed by memories of the lives I had irreparably scarred, a constant reminder that no amount of time could ever erase the consequences of my actions. The more I tried to suppress these memories, the more they surged forth, as if determined to exact a price for my silence. One cold, overcast afternoon, I ventured into the heart of the city with a singular purpose: to confront the ghosts of my past head-on. I navigated through narrow backstreets lined with crumbling facades and faded murals, each step echoing with the weight of history. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and every gust of wind carried with it a whisper of retribution. At a deserted intersection, I paused before a dilapidated building whose windows resembled empty, accusing eyes. There, amidst the detritus of forgotten eras, I encountered a scene so surreal it defied description: a collection of relics, a discarded glove, a rusted key, a faded photograph arranged as if in a macabre tableau meant solely for me. The items, though ordinary in isolation, coalesced into a symbol of the irreversible chain of events that had defined my existence. That day, the boundaries between my inner torment and the external world seemed to dissolve entirely. I felt the presence of those I had harmed, their silent voices urging me to acknowledge the inevitability of judgment. Each relic was a piece of a puzzle that I had long ignored, now demanding to be reassembled into the full picture of my transgressions. The city, in its relentless progression, offered no respite, only a stark reminder that time moves inexorably forward, even as the past refuses to be forgotten. Nightfall brought with it an even deeper descent into darkness. The cold embrace of midnight wrapped around me as I wandered through deserted streets where the glow of streetlights barely penetrated the suffocating gloom. In the solitude of these nocturnal journeys, I began to perceive an uncanny duality, the interplay of light and shadow that mirrored the conflict within my soul. Every neon sign, every flickering light, became a symbol of a double life, a facade of normality masking a torrent of guilt and despair. I was a man caught between worlds, haunted by the realization that my carefully constructed narrative was nothing more than an illusion waiting to be shattered. The turning point came on a night when the rain was so heavy that it blurred the edges of reality. I found myself standing before an ancient, graffiti-scarred wall in a narrow alleyway. The wall, layered with decades of urban decay and whispered secrets, seemed to pulse with an almost sentient awareness. As I pressed my hand against its cold surface, I felt as though I were touching the very essence of my past, each crack and crevice a testament to the lives disrupted by my choices. In that moment, a torrent of memories surged forth, the terror in a victim's eyes, the quiet despair of those left to suffer the consequences of my inaction, and the haunting echo of a justice that had long been denied. It was a revelation that struck me with the force of a tidal wave, a profound understanding that my freedom, however twisted, was built on the ruins of broken lives. The arrival of dawn did little to dispel the darkness that clung to me. Instead, it revealed new layers of anguish and regret. The pale light of morning filtered through the fog, casting long, distorted shadows that danced like specters on the walls. I trudged along empty streets, each step an act of reluctant acceptance. The city was awakening, indifferent to the inner turmoil of a man condemned by his own choices. In the soft, muted light, I recognized that every moment of reprieve was temporary, that the truth of my past was an ever-present specter that would not be exorcised by the mere passage of time. In a desperate bid to reconcile with my fractured self, I sought solace in the only ritual that had ever offered a semblance of clarity: the written word. I dedicated countless hours to pouring out my soul in sprawling, unedited entries that captured every nuance of my internal collapse. The journal became a confidant, a silent witness to the raw, unfiltered confession of a man tormented by both remorse and defiance. With every line, I wrestled with the paradox of my existence, a man who had long evaded justice, yet who now found himself entangled in a web of self-imposed punishment, where every memory was both a revelation and a curse. It was during one of these marathon sessions of introspection that I discovered a peculiar clarity. As I reread my frantic scrawl under the dim light of a flickering bulb, I realized that the torment I endured was not merely a product of external forces, the relentless pursuit of an ever-elusive justice, but also the manifestation of my own inner conflicts. I was, in essence, my own judge and executioner, condemned to a lifetime of relentless self-scrutiny. The realization was as liberating as it was damning, a spark of defiance in the face of an inevitable reckoning. Yet, amid the labyrinth of my despair, there emerged fleeting moments of beauty, a strange, almost poetic irony in the interplay of chaos and order. In the way the rain washed over the city, blurring the boundaries between past and present, in the gentle interplay of neon reflections on rain-soaked pavement, in the silent, resigned acceptance of an empty street at dawn, I found echoes of redemption. These transient glimpses of grace, however ephemeral, fueled a growing resolve within me. Perhaps, if I could confront these memories head-on and accept the full weight of my choices, I might carve a path through the darkness. Now, as I walk these rain-drenched streets with a renewed, if tormented, determination, I can no longer ignore the truth. My past is an indelible part of who I am, a shadow that will forever lurk in every corner of my existence. The faces of those I wronged, whether they be the silent victims or the tormented souls condemned by my inaction, remain etched in my mind, a constant reminder that freedom is never truly free. The dichotomy of my life, the duality of guilt and a twisted form of liberation, has merged into a singular, overwhelming truth. In that painful clarity, I recognize that my journey is far from over. Every encounter, every whispered reminder of a past I cannot escape, is both a punishment and a call to redemption. I have become a reluctant wanderer in a city of ghosts, a man haunted not only by the specters of his victims but also by the fractured remnants of his own identity. And so, with each step, I resolve to embrace this bitter path, a journey marked by shattered illusions and the painful hope that, one day, even the darkest chapters of my life might yield to a semblance of understanding. In the abyss of remorse, I wake each day as though reborn into a world where every ray of light is tainted by the shadow of my past. The silence that greets me each morning is not a gentle reprieve but a suffocating reminder of the endless nights spent wrestling with my own despair. I find no solace in the chirping of birds or the soft caress of the early sun. Instead, every sound, every touch of warmth, feels like an echo of lives I once shattered. I wander through the narrow, rain-soaked streets of the city, each step resonating like the pounding of my heart, irregular, desperate, and full of a sorrow too deep for words. The pavement beneath my feet is slick with the remnants of a storm that mirrors my inner turmoil. In every glistening drop, I see reflections of faces long lost, their eyes pleading for the justice that never came. The city, with its haphazard mix of decaying relics and neon promises, has become my prison and my confession. Every building, every alleyway, whispers secrets of the past, and I am forced to confront the unrelenting truth: I cannot escape the abyss of my own remorse. The memories are vivid and relentless. I see them as though projected onto the very fabric of my existence, a montage of fleeting moments that, together, form a tapestry of agony. There is the sight of a terrified face illuminated by the harsh glare of a streetlight, the echo of a sobbing child in an empty room, the silent, accusing eyes of strangers who pass by unaware of the monstrous truth that haunts me. Each memory is a shard of glass, embedded in my heart, cutting deeper with every beat. I try to drown these memories in the noise of the present, but they are insidious, creeping in through every fissure in my fragile armor. There are nights when sleep eludes me entirely, and I am left alone with the cacophony of my regrets. In the dark hours, when the world is asleep, the past comes alive with a terrifying clarity. I recall the moments of cruelty, the inexplicable impulses that drove me to commit acts I now cannot forgive. Each memory is a searing brand upon my soul, a reminder of the irreversible damage wrought by my own hands. I lie awake in a cramped room where the only light is the erratic blinking of a faulty bulb, and I find myself questioning if redemption is a myth, a fairy tale meant for those unburdened by the weight of their sins. In these moments, I write feverishly in my journal, pouring out the torrent of emotion that threatens to overwhelm me. The act of writing is both a torment and a balm, a way to externalize the agony that has become my constant companion. My words are jagged and desperate, scrawled in an erratic hand that betrays the tremors of my soul. I write about the faces that haunt me, the voices that whisper in the silence, and the crushing realization that the past is an inescapable labyrinth with no exit. Every line is a confession, a plea for forgiveness that I do not believe I deserve, yet I offer it with trembling sincerity, hoping that somewhere in the vast expanse of my guilt, there might be a sliver of absolution. As days blur into nights, the relentless passage of time becomes both a curse and a reminder of my own mortality. I have come to understand that time is a cruel, indifferent force, one that erodes all things, even the sharp edges of remorse. Yet, in its ceaseless march, time has done nothing to heal the wounds of the past. Instead, it has layered my grief upon itself, building a monument of sorrow that I carry like an albatross around my neck. Every tick of the clock is a verdict, every fading second a reminder of the lives I have ruined and the souls that will never know peace. There are moments, fleeting and fragile, when I allow myself to wonder if the universe holds a measure of mercy, a chance for a broken man to find some form of redemption. But those thoughts are like fragile bubbles, rising only to burst under the weight of harsh reality. In the mirror, I see not a man capable of change, but a haunted specter whose eyes reflect the agony of countless lost souls. The reflection is a constant torment, a living reminder of a past that refuses to be forgotten. I trace the lines of my face as if reading an ancient manuscript, each wrinkle a chapter of a story written in pain and regret. My encounters with the world have become a series of silent confrontations. I pass by people on the street, their eyes meeting mine for a brief, heart-stopping moment, a moment where I fear they might see the truth lurking behind my carefully constructed facade. Their indifference is a dagger in my heart, for I know that no one can truly understand the labyrinth of guilt in which I am imprisoned. I have tried to escape by immersing myself in the routines of life, in the hum of the city and the flicker of neon lights, yet even these distractions serve only to remind me that the past is never far behind. Every reflection in a window, every shadow cast on a rain-soaked wall, seems to carry the imprint of my transgressions. In the depths of my despair, I have found a paradoxical beauty in the very things that torment me. The rain, which once felt like a relentless deluge of sorrow, now becomes a symphony of cleansing, a bittersweet reminder that even the most torrential storms eventually give way to a pale, uncertain light. The city, with its scars and blemishes, is a testament to resilience, a living, breathing chronicle of survival against all odds. And yet, amid this beauty, there is an unyielding pain, a sorrow so profound that it seems to saturate every fiber of my being. I marvel at the juxtaposition of destruction and hope, of despair and a glimmer of forgiveness, even as I wonder if such a glimmer can ever truly reach a heart as scarred as mine. There is a particular night that sears itself into my memory, a night when the boundaries between past and present collapsed into a maelstrom of raw emotion. I had taken refuge in an abandoned building on the outskirts of the city, a place where time seemed to stand still. The building was a relic of another era, its walls echoing with voices of long-forgotten souls. As I sat in the dim light, the distant sound of rain tapping against broken windows, I felt an overwhelming surge of grief and longing. I was overcome by a desperate need to relive every moment, to understand every choice that had led me to this abyss of self-destruction. In that desolate space, I allowed myself to cry a torrent of tears that carried away years of suppressed anguish. I wept for the innocence I had stolen, for the opportunities one had squandered, and for the irrevocable pain I had inflicted upon others. The sound of my sobs mingled with the melancholic whispers of the wind, creating a symphony of regret that resonated through the empty corridors of the building. In that moment, I realized that my grief was not just for the victims of my past, but for the man I had once been, a man who, in his arrogance and indifference, had believed himself invincible. The realization was a crushing blow, and I felt as if I were drowning in an ocean of remorse with no shore in sight. As I emerged from that night, battered by the storm of my own emotions, I carried with me a renewed determination, a desperate need to confront the demons that had long haunted me. I began to seek out the remnants of the past, not as a means of reliving old wounds, but as a way of piecing together a mosaic of truth that might, one day, lead me to some semblance of redemption. I revisited the places where history had been etched into the very walls of the city, a forgotten park bench beneath a weeping willow, a narrow alleyway where the echoes of lost voices still lingered, and the crumbling facade of an old building that had once witnessed the unfolding of my darkest hours. Every step in this journey was an act of contrition, a silent vow to face the consequences of my actions, however belatedly. I questioned the nature of fate and free will, wrestling with the idea that my past was not merely a series of isolated events but a continuum, a relentless tide that had shaped every moment of my existence. In the quiet solitude of my wanderings, I felt as though I were speaking to the ghosts of my past, each step a dialogue between the man I was and the man I could never be again. The weight of these revelations was almost unbearable, yet I pressed on, driven by a need to understand, to atone, and perhaps, in time, to forgive myself. There are moments when I catch a glimpse of hope, a fleeting, fragile light that seems to emanate from the very darkness that surrounds me. It might be a kind word from a stranger, a serendipitous encounter with a long-forgotten melody, or the gentle caress of a cool breeze on a sweltering afternoon. In these brief instances, I am reminded that life, despite its cruelty, still holds the promise of renewal. But these moments are as ephemeral as they are elusive, vanishing almost as soon as they appear, leaving me with nothing but the echo of their beauty and the bitterness of their impermanence. My nights are now spent in a restless dialogue with the shadows. I lie awake, haunted by the ghosts of my past, each one a silent specter that refuses to be banished by time. I have learned to listen to the voices of regret, soft, persistent murmurs that rise from the depths of my subconscious. They remind me of every mistake, every cruelty, every fleeting moment of indulgence that set me on this path of despair. And yet, in that same relentless cadence, there is also a call, a plea for transformation that, though faint, offers a promise of a future unburdened by endless sorrow. I have come to view my journey as a pilgrimage into the heart of darkness, a necessary descent into the abyss of my own making. In this descent, I face not only the wrath of those I have wronged but also the unyielding judgment of my own conscience. Each day is a battle against the overwhelming tide of regret, each night a crucible in which my soul is tested and remade. I find that the more I delve into the depths of my remorse, the more I understand that redemption is not a destination but a continuous act of creation, of fragile, ephemeral beauty forged in the crucible of pain. There are times when I am overwhelmed by the intensity of my emotions, when the burden of my past threatens to shatter the remnants of my spirit. In these moments, I retreat into the solitude of an old, abandoned chapel on the edge of the city, a sanctuary of shattered stained glass and quiet prayer. In that silent, sacred space, I allow myself to be vulnerable, to cry out to a higher power even as I struggle to believe that I am worthy of mercy. The cold stone beneath my fingertips and the faint scent of incense stir memories of a time when hope was not yet a stranger to me. I kneel before a dilapidated altar and whisper apologies into the void, my words trembling with the weight of a lifetime of regret. It is here, in the silent communion of solitude, that I dare to imagine a possibility, a life transformed by the raw, unfiltered truth of my own suffering. I leave the chapel with a heart both heavy and resolute. The world outside is as indifferent as ever, a chaotic blend of light and darkness, of beauty and decay. Yet, I now see it with a clarity that I had long denied myself. I see the scars on the city, the worn facades of its buildings, and I understand that each mark tells a story of survival and loss. Every crack in the pavement, every faded mural on a crumbling wall, is a testament to the passage of time and the unyielding resilience of life. And within these silent testimonies, I find a reflection of my own journey, a path marked by pain, yet also by the possibility of renewal. In the aftermath of my relentless introspection, I have begun to recognize that my existence is an intricate tapestry of contradictions. I am both the architect of my own downfall and a reluctant pilgrim seeking the elusive embrace of forgiveness. The abyss of remorse into which I have plunged is vast and unforgiving, yet within its depths, I have also discovered a fragile spark of hope. It is this spark that compels me to continue my journey, a journey defined by shattered illusions, endless nights of grief, and the tentative promise of a redemption that may never fully come. And so, I trudge onward, burdened by my sins yet driven by an insatiable need to reclaim the fragments of a life once filled with the promise of light. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the world lies draped in the soft glow of early light, I pause to reflect on the fragile beauty of existence. I see in the delicate dewdrops on a withered leaf, in the gentle hum of a waking city, a reminder that even in the midst of sorrow, life clings to its own form of grace. It is in these fleeting moments of clarity that I dare to dream of a future where the relentless pain of the past is tempered by the gentle promise of healing, a future where my confessions, my tears, and my shattered illusions might finally coalesce into something resembling absolution. Now, as I continue to navigate this labyrinth of memory and regret, every step feels both excruciatingly heavy and infinitely significant. I have learned that to confront the abyss is to face the raw, unadulterated truth of one's own soul, a truth that is as liberating as it is devastating. And so, with a heart that trembles beneath the weight of 1,000 remorseful whispers, I walk forward, ever aware that each breath is a testament to the unbearable beauty of living with the consequences of my own choices. I am haunted by the faces of those who have slipped away into the silence of lost time, faces that, even in death, continue to demand a reckoning. Their silent testimonies echo in every step I take, urging me to confront the darkness that festers within. I do not know if the path ahead will lead to redemption or simply deeper into the void, but I have come to understand that the journey itself, with all its agonizing twists and turns, is a part of the penance I must bear. It is a journey through a landscape marred by sorrow yet illuminated by the faint, persistent glow of hope. I write these words not only as a confession of my own transgressions but also as a tribute to the fragility of the human spirit, a spirit that, despite the relentless onslaught of grief and regret, still yearns for a glimmer of light in the midst of endless night. In every tear that falls, in every word that trembles from my lips, I search for a redemption that may lie hidden in the folds of my own brokenness. And though I know that no amount of time or contrition can erase the scars of the past, I cling to the belief that even in the abyss of remorse, there is a chance, however small, for a rebirth, for a transformation born of the most painful truths. Thus, I continue my pilgrimage into the heart of darkness, with each step echoing the silent, anguished chorus of a lifetime lived in the shadow of remorse. I do not seek forgiveness from the world, for I know that my sins are inscribed in the very fabric of my being. Instead, I offer these words as a testament to the enduring power of regret, a power that, though it may break the spirit, also reminds us that we are alive, capable of feeling every exquisite, excruciating emotion that makes us human. And so, in the quiet solitude of another rain-drenched night, I whisper my truth to the empty streets and the indifferent sky. I confess that I am both the monster and the mourner, the sinner and the penitent, bound together in a dance of despair and fragile hope. In this endless interplay of light and darkness, I strive to find meaning amid the ruins of my past, ever aware that the journey toward redemption is as torturous as it is transformative. The unforgiving mirror. I reached a point where the quiet agony of my daily existence could no longer be masked by the ordinary cadence of life. Each day, as I awoke to the muted light of a reluctant dawn, I felt the relentless tug of a past that refused to fade. The mirror had become my most brutal confidant, a cold, unyielding reflection that revealed every crevice of guilt etched into my face. In that glass, I no longer saw the man who once reveled in a twisted sense of freedom. Instead, I saw the embodiment of every mistake, every stolen moment of terror inflicted upon those I had wronged. In the suffocating solitude of my modest room, where every object whispered memories of darker times, I began to confront the truth. There was no escape from the relentless barrage of self-reproach that hammered at my soul like an unyielding tide. I pored over my journal once more, its pages stained with the ink of remorse and trembling confessions. With each word I read, the barrier between who I was and who I had become dissolved, leaving me naked before the unforgiving mirror of reality. Every recollection was a wound that refused to heal, a permanent scar that would always remind me of my transgressions. The city outside continued its indifferent hustle, its neon glow and modern rhythms offering little comfort against the internal tempest that raged within me. I wandered its rain-slicked streets, burdened by the ceaseless murmurs of memories. I passed through forgotten neighborhoods where old brick walls bore silent witness to decades of unspoken anguish. In those streets, I could almost hear the echo of innocent laughter turn to sorrow, a reminder of how my actions had forever altered lives in ways I could barely comprehend. Every footstep resonated with a painful cadence, a dirge that celebrated both the beauty and the cruelty of a life marked by irreversible choices. One fateful evening, as the skies unleashed a torrential downpour that blurred the line between past and present, I found myself drawn to a deserted bridge that spanned a dark, turbulent river. The rain merged with my tears as I stood there, shivering beneath the cold barrage. The turbulent water below roared like a beast, its frothy currents an apt metaphor for the relentless force of my inner torment. There, amidst the chaos of nature's fury, I confronted the most harrowing truth of all: I was irrevocably bound to the shadows of my past. In that moment, the world around me ceased to matter. There was only the raw, aching pain of a conscience laid bare. At the bridge, I lingered until the storm showed signs of abating. As the rain tapered off and the darkness began to yield to a timid glimmer of dawn, I sat on the cold, damp concrete, feeling both defeated and inexplicably alive. The silence that followed the storm was profound, a silence heavy with the weight of unspoken words and unfinished reckonings. In that stillness, I resolved that no longer could I deny the consequences of my actions. I must confront every sorrowful echo, every face of despair, and lay my soul open to the very judgment that had haunted me for so long. I embarked on a journey through the hidden corners of the city, returning to the sites that had once served as the backdrop to my darkest deeds. Each location was a silent witness to the irreparable damage I had inflicted. A rundown park bench where a child's laughter had once resonated now lay in ruin. A narrow alleyway remembered for desperate whispers now echoed only with the quiet murmurs of regret. As I revisited these places, I felt an unbearable mixture of sorrow and clarity. The physical decay around me mirrored the slow, insidious corrosion of my spirit, a constant reminder that no facade of indifference could shield me from the truth. In the quiet aftermath of my pilgrimage, I sought refuge in an abandoned building that had long since lost its purpose. The interior was a labyrinth of peeling walls and fractured memories, its silence punctuated by the soft drip of water from a broken pipe. Here, in this forgotten sanctuary, I allowed myself to break down completely. I sat in the center of a dusty room, my eyes fixed on the mottled ceiling, and I began to cry deep, unrelenting sobs that carried the burden of a lifetime of regret. In that cathartic outpouring, I was not just mourning the victims of my past, I was mourning the person I had become, a man whose freedom had been a cruel illusion, whose every moment was a reminder of sins that time could not erase. In that raw vulnerability, I felt a strange kinship with the remnants of the building, its broken windows, its shattered remnants of a once vibrant life. I whispered to the silence, asking if there was any possibility of redemption, any sliver of hope that might yet pierce the darkness that had come to define me. The silence offered no answer, only the endless echo of my own heartache. And yet, within that silence, I sensed a quiet promise, a subtle, almost imperceptible call to rebuild, to find beauty in the ruins. That night, as I left the abandoned building and stepped back into the uncertain glow of the city, I carried with me the image of my own face in that unforgiving mirror. It was a face that had known no peace, a face that was a canvas painted with every regret and every sorrow. I had accepted that I was forever changed by the choices I had made, and that the journey toward absolution was a path that would wind through endless nights and solitary moments of reckoning. The days that followed were marked by an arduous process of internal reconciliation. I began to approach each new sunrise not with dread, but with a fragile resolve to face whatever lay ahead. Every morning became an exercise in rediscovering fragments of myself that had been lost in the chaos of remorse. I reached out, in my own silent way, to those who had been touched by the ripples of my misdeeds, seeking to mend what could never truly be mended. Though words of apology fell short of healing the deep wounds I had inflicted, they were a tentative bridge over the chasm of guilt, a bridge built from the fragile hope that, perhaps, even the most broken spirit could learn to find a measure of peace. And so I pressed on, each step an act of defiance against the relentless pull of despair. I learned that the journey toward redemption was not about erasing the past, but about acknowledging it with unflinching honesty. I discovered that even in the harsh glare of self-condemnation, there existed moments of profound clarity, a glimpse of light that might one day guide me out of the darkness. In the interplay of rain and light, decay and renewal, I began to see that my life was not a series of irreversible tragedies but a complex tapestry of pain and possibility. Every night, as the city slumbered beneath a quilt of stars, I returned to that same mirror, the one that had shown me the harshest truths of my existence, and I dared to look again. With each passing day, the reflection, though still marred by the scars of the past, began to soften ever so slightly. In the depths of those unyielding eyes, I caught a glimpse of the man I might yet become, a man capable of bearing the unbearable, who might, through sheer force of will, transform his anguish into a testament of resilience. Thus, in the quiet aftermath of my confrontation with the unforgiving mirror, I found within myself a spark, a delicate, defiant light that whispered of the possibility of change. I knew that the road ahead was fraught with peril and that my sins would forever be a part of me. Yet, as I stepped forward into the uncertain embrace of a new day, I clung to that fragile hope, daring to believe that even the most tormented soul might one day learn to forgive itself. Redemption's distant echo. As the long, arduous journey through my inner darkness reaches its final cadence, I find myself at a crossroads where the past and future merge in a fragile, trembling embrace. In the soft light of an awakening day, I stand on the threshold of a new beginning, one that is defined not by the sins that have tormented me, but by the small, persistent sparks of hope that have slowly kindled in the depths of my despair. Every memory, every painful confession etched into the fabric of my soul, has led me to this singular moment of reckoning. I have traversed the rain-soaked alleys and desolate bridges of my past, gazed unflinchingly into the unforgiving mirror of my own reflection, and borne witness to the relentless echo of remorse that has shadowed my every step. And yet, as I now take a step forward, I feel the steady pulse of life reminding me that even the most fractured spirit can find a reason to rise. In the quiet hours before the full light of day, I return to that same chapel where I once knelt in desperate prayer. This time, however, I did not merely whisper apologies into the void. I listened. I allowed the silence to fill me with its ancient wisdom, a reminder that the journey toward redemption is not about erasing the scars, but about learning to live with them while daring to dream of renewal. Each step I take is now guided by a newfound resolve, to honor the memory of those lost by transforming my grief into a testament of survival, and perhaps, one day, into a beacon for others wandering in the darkness. Walking through the city now, every familiar street tells a story of pain and resilience. The cold, indifferent facades of buildings no longer serve solely as monuments to decay but as silent witnesses to the human capacity for change. I notice details that once escaped my notice: the gentle curve of a lamppost casting a warm glow on cracked pavement, the soft murmur of the wind weaving through ancient brick walls, and the tender interplay of light and shadow that paints the urban landscape with hints of quiet beauty. These subtle signs of life, once drowned out by the cacophony of regret, now sing softly of a possibility of redemption that may not be complete, but is undeniably real. I have begun to rebuild, piece by fragile piece, the identity I lost in the labyrinth of guilt. The journal that once overflowed with raw confessions now also holds sketches of tentative plans, a roadmap to reclaiming a part of myself that was buried beneath decades of remorse. With every word I write, I stitch together the disparate fragments of my existence into a tapestry that speaks not only of suffering but also of endurance and the human longing for forgiveness. The journey remains long, and the weight of the past is not easily shrugged off, but I have learned that the road to redemption is paved with both sorrow and the courageous spark of hope. In this final act of introspection, I stand on a quiet street at the break of day, where the cool light of morning gently banishes the lingering darkness of night. I no longer see my reflection as the unyielding portrait of a condemned soul. Instead, I begin to recognize a man weathered by pain yet still capable of change. I carry within me the memories of those who suffered, the echoes of their silent pleas, and I vow that their voices will not be in vain. Though the path ahead is uncertain, I step forward with a heart that, while still scarred, beats with the resilient rhythm of possibility. This is my final confession, a testament to the transformative power of confronting one's past. The distant echo of redemption calls to me, a fragile promise that even amidst the ruins of regret, a new life can be forged. As I blend the lessons of my tortured history with the quiet hope of a tomorrow bathed in gentle light, I embrace the truth that I am both a mosaic of broken memories and the architect of my own future. The journey toward absolution is ongoing, and while I may never fully escape the shadows of my deeds, I can choose to let the light of every small act of courage guide me toward a distant, yet real, redemption. As we reach the close of our journey through the shadowed corridors of the human psyche, I invite you to join me in one final moment of contemplation, a moment where we lay bare the truth behind the crimes, the remorse, and the relentless pursuit of redemption. This is the conclusion of our exploration on Inside the Criminal World, where every echo of the past and every flicker of hope converges into a single, haunting truth. I stand before you now, not as a man defined solely by the darkness of his past, but as someone who has wrestled with the most profound inner demons and emerged with a tentative understanding of what it means to live with regret and, ultimately, to seek redemption. For decades, I have walked a path littered with the remnants of shattered illusions, a path marked by unspeakable acts and the endless echoes of remorse. And yet, it is within this labyrinth of guilt and longing that I discovered an essential truth: every life, no matter how broken, holds the potential for transformation. In the quiet aftermath of countless sleepless nights and tear-stained confessions, I began to see that the journey toward absolution is not a destination reached in a single moment, but a continuous act of courage, a daily commitment to confront the past, no matter how unbearable its weight. As I recount the events that led me down this tortuous path, I realized that the true horror of my actions was not in the crimes themselves, but in the slow erosion of the human spirit. Each act of cruelty, each moment of unchecked impulse, left behind scars not only on those who suffered but also on my own soul, a soul that, for too long, had been trapped in a cycle of self-destruction and despair. I remember the long nights when the rain fell with an unrelenting persistence, as if the heavens themselves mourned the losses inflicted by my hands. I recall wandering through abandoned alleys and crumbling neighborhoods, where every reflection in a puddle seemed to whisper the names of those I could never forget. It was during those moments of solitude, when the world around me was cloaked in silence and darkness, that I came to understand the full measure of my own humanity. For in the midst of such desolation, I found a fragile spark of empathy, a recognition that my own pain was inextricably linked to the suffering of others. As the days turned into months, and the months into years, I began to piece together the shattered fragments of my identity. I took up my journal once more, not just to recount the misdeeds of a past that could never be erased, but to search for the elusive traces of a man I once believed I could be. The act of writing became a ritual of catharsis, a way to externalize the inner turmoil that had consumed me for so long. With each word, I endeavored to transform my anguish into something that might, in time, serve as a beacon for others lost in the labyrinth of their own regrets. Throughout this journey, I have been forced to confront a painful paradox, that the very freedom I once celebrated, the freedom to commit my crimes and to evade justice, was, in truth, a prison of my own making. For every moment of liberation, there lay a hidden cost, a cost measured not in the fleeting thrill of evasion, but in the enduring, agonizing remorse that followed. I learned that there is no true escape from the past. It clings to us like a shadow, ever present and unyielding. And yet, it is precisely this unescapable truth that offers the possibility of transformation. In acknowledging the inescapable weight of my actions, I discovered the courage to look beyond them, to imagine a future where even the most haunted soul might find a glimmer of redemption. This video, and the story it tells, is more than just a chronicle of crimes and consequences. It is a testament to the complexity of the human condition. It is a narrative that challenges the simplistic labels of criminal and victim and asks us to consider the intricate interplay of fate, free will, and the choices we make in the darkness of our own minds. I share this with you not to elicit pity or to glorify a life marred by misdeeds, but to open a window into the struggles that lie hidden behind every facade. Every act of violence, every moment of cruelty, is intertwined with the raw, unfiltered emotions that drive us all: fear, anger, regret, and the desperate, burning desire for forgiveness. Now, as we stand at the end of this exploration, I ask you to reflect on what you have witnessed. Consider the faces of those lost in the shadows of my past, the silent victims whose lives were forever altered by the choices of a man who once believed he could outrun his destiny. Their memories, etched into the fabric of time, serve as a somber reminder that justice is not a simple matter of retribution. It is a process of reckoning, a journey through the depths of sorrow and the heights of hope. I have come to understand that redemption is not an absolute state. It is a fragile, evolving process that requires us to embrace our imperfections and to acknowledge the scars that define us. It is the willingness to face the unforgiving mirror of our own actions and to recognize that even the most fractured soul can, with time and effort, begin to heal. There is a delicate beauty in this struggle, a beauty born from the acknowledgement that we are all, in our own ways, both perpetrators and victims, creators and destroyers, bound by the intricate tapestry of our shared humanity. In the final hours of this video, as the soft glow of the screen fades into the quiet darkness of contemplation, I offer you these parting words. Let the story of my past serve as a cautionary tale, a reminder that the pursuit of freedom without responsibility can lead to an endless cycle of pain and regret. But also, let it be a beacon of hope, a declaration that no matter how deep the shadows, there is always the possibility of light. Each step forward, no matter how tentative, is an act of defiance against the relentless pull of despair. The channel Inside the Criminal World was born out of a need to confront these truths, to delve into the heart of darkness, not merely to expose its horrors, but to understand its profound impact on the human spirit. It is my hope that through this journey, you will come to appreciate that the path to redemption is paved not with denial or escape, but with honest, unflinching introspection. In the echoes of every crime, in the silent aftermath of every regret, lies a lesson that is as universal as it is deeply personal, that the human capacity for change is as boundless as our capacity for error. As we draw this narrative to a close, I invite you to carry with you the lessons learned from these turbulent chapters. May you look into your own inner mirror and see not just the imperfections that scar your soul, but the resilient spark of potential that awaits nurturing. For it is only when we acknowledge the darkness within us that we can truly begin to cultivate the light. Thank you for joining me on this profound journey through the intricacies of guilt, remorse, and the arduous pursuit of redemption. May the reflections shared here stir in you the courage to confront your own inner battles and to seek the healing that lies beyond the reach of regret. And as you step back into the world outside, remember that even in the most turbulent of nights, there exists the promise of a new dawn, a promise that each of us, no matter how lost, can find our way toward a future imbued with hope and the possibility of renewal. This is not the end of my story, nor is it the final word on the human struggle between darkness and light. It is merely a chapter, a raw, honest confession etched into the annals of inside the criminal world. Let it serve as a reminder that our past does not have to dictate our future, and that every day offers a new chance to reshape the narrative of our lives. May we all find the strength to face our inner demons, the humility to seek forgiveness, and the wisdom to transform our scars into symbols of our enduring resilience. For in the end, it is not our failures that define us, but the courage with which we rise from them, a courage that, even in the depths of our despair, whispers of redemption's distant echo. Thank you for listening, for watching, and for daring to explore the dark recesses of a world that is as complex as it is unforgiving. This has been Inside the Criminal World, a journey through shadow and sorrow, culminating in the tender hope of renewal. May you carry this truth with you as you navigate the labyrinth of your own life, ever mindful that even the most haunted souls can someday learn to forgive, and even the deepest scars can, with time, give way to a light that is both gentle and enduring.